The morning light spilled like honey over the skyline of Azania City, a place where skyscrapers kissed the clouds and dusty old courtyards whispered secrets of ancient drums. In the bustle of the modern metropolis, tradition wore the face of murals, the scent of spice street food, and the rhythm of choral melodies playing from hidden courtyards. Amina stood at the edge of District 7, the last remaining historic quarter untouched by the government's steel and glass development schemes. She adjusted her sunglasses and squinted at the row of colonial-era buildings that framed the street like old men watching a parade. Her job as an urban planner was to bring change, but something about this place stirred a resistance inside her. She turned to her assistant, Fola, who stood behind her with a digital clipboard. "So this is it? The final survey?" Fola nodded. "The council wants our proposal in by Friday. We start demolition next month, unless someone raises an official complaint." Amina's eyes drifted over the faded pastel walls, the iron balconies rusted but graceful, the cobbled roads still echoing with distant footfalls of generations. Her fingers tightened on her tablet. Progress was necessary, but what if progress meant forgetting? They turned a corner onto Ode Street, and that's when she saw it. Her steps slowed. It was a mural. But not like the others she had seen scattered across the city, this one was alive. The painting stretched across a decaying wall of an abandoned music school. It depicted a woman dressed in traditional Maasai robes, her arms raised to the sky as constellations poured from her palms. Beside her stood a man wrapped in ochre cloth, holding a drum that pulsed with light. Between them ran a golden thread, tethering their hearts to the city skyline behind them. It stopped Amina cold. She approached, heart fluttering. The brush strokes were bold yet intimate, colors deep and raw. She felt as though the mural wasn't painted on the wall but etched into the city's very soul. "Who did this?" she whispered. Fola tapped her tablet. "Says here, the artist goes by Kofi. No last name. He's not officially registered. Underground scene. Street exhibitions. Live somewhere in Makoni." Amina stared at the mural again. "Get me his contact. I want to meet him." 2 days later, Amina found herself on a rickety motorbike taxi navigating the winding alleys of Makoni, a neighborhood where tradition walked hand in hand with rebellion. The roads here were not straight or smooth, neither were the lives of the people who lived in them. Men sat playing ao under baobab trees. Women sold roasted plantains and cola nuts on straw mats, their children weaving in and out of traffic like fish in a stream. The driver pulled up to a corner where a boy no older than 10 pointed at a rusted metal gate adorned with painted suns and lions. "That's where he paints," the boy said in Yoruba, grinning before running off with a toothy smile. Amina pushed the gate open, stepping into what looked like a forgotten garden of colors. Canvases leaned against old water drums. Spray cans lay like scattered offerings. A tarp stretched between 2 poles provided shade over a rough wooden table. And there, barefoot and shirtless, stood Kofi. He didn't look up at first. He was lost in the rhythm of a brush dancing over a canvas, each stroke like a verse in a poem only he could hear. His dreadlocks were tied in a loose knot, and paint stained his hands and chest like tribal markings. Amina cleared her throat. He turned slowly. Their eyes met. For a moment, the air thickened around them. Not with awkwardness, but with recognition. "You're the city planner," he said, as if he'd expected her. "And you're the artist." Silence passed like a gentle breeze. "I've seen your mural in District 7, she said. It moved me. I don't know why, but it did. I need to talk to you. He wiped his hands on a cloth and gestured to a bench. Then sit. Talking is free. For now. Amina lowered herself onto the bench, its wooden frame warm from the midday sun. Kofi poured cold hibiscus tea from a gourd and offered her a calabash cup. She accepted, sipping slowly. The flavor was tangy, earthy, and unfamiliar, yet oddly comforting. So, he said, leaning against the table, what does a government planner want with a rebel artist? Amina bristled slightly. I'm not here on behalf of the government. I'm here because, that mural. It changed something in me. Kofi smiled, not mockingly, but as one might when hearing something familiar. That's its job. I want to know more. About you. About your work. Why you paint the way you do. He studied her for a moment. People forget where they come from. This city, it's growing so fast, it's eating itself. My paintings are a way to remind us of the stories that built our bones. You use mythology, she said, her voice soft. The mural in District 7, it felt like a legend. He nodded. It is. An old one. About star lovers who kept the skies and land connected. But I change it. Each mural tells the story again, but for now. May I see more of them, she asked. Kofi tilted his head. Only if you come with open eyes and closed expectations. Amina laughed gently. Deal. They spent the next hour walking through Makoni's winding paths. Kofi showed her murals hidden behind shops, under bridges, painted across rooftops only visible from certain angles. Each one whispered of spirits, love, betrayal, and rebirth. The sun began to dip low, casting an orange glow over the neighborhood. As they returned to the garden, Amina turned to Kofi. You know, she said, the place where I found your mural, it's scheduled for demolition. He didn't respond immediately. Then, I know. You're okay with that? He looked her dead in the eye. Are you? That night, Amina didn't sleep easily. Dreams came, of golden threads stretching across stars, of drums echoing from the past, of a mural that pulsed like a heartbeat. She woke before dawn, sat on her balcony, and watched the city stir. Her fingers hovered over her tablet. She had a decision to make. The morning after her encounter with Kofi, Amina sat at her desk at the urban planning office, staring at the architectural renderings of District 7's redevelopment. The sketches on her screen showed sleek high-rise buildings, glass facades, and wide streets filled with parked cars. It was a vision of progress, of the future. But as she sat there, her mind kept drifting back to the mural she had seen 2 days ago. The golden thread that connected the lovers in the painting, Amina couldn't shake the image. It had pulled her in, deeper than she could explain. The colors, the rhythm, the power of the connection, it wasn't just art, it felt like a living, breathing force. She turned off her tablet and stood up, pacing the office, her heels tapping against the cold marble floor. She thought about the mural's meaning. It was about connection, something deeper than the buildings she was planning to tear down. The mural was a story of heritage, of love, of history, things that couldn't be erased by concrete and steel. Her phone buzzed, breaking her thoughts. It was a message from Kofi. Meet me at the mural. We need to talk. It's time. Amina's heart skipped a beat. She didn't need any more encouragement. She grabbed her bag and rushed out of the office. She was more than ready to hear what Kofi had to say, even though she wasn't sure she could fully understand it yet. A few hours later, she found herself standing before the mural again, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the wall. This time, she wasn't with her assistant, Fola, or anyone from the planning department. This was a private meeting, an invitation to something unknown. Kofi was already there, standing in front of the mural, his back to her. He looked up as she approached, his eyes filled with an intensity that made her heart race. "You came," he said, his voice low and steady. "That's a good sign." Amina nodded, unsure of what to say. The words felt heavy in her mouth, like they might break the delicate balance of the moment. "I've been thinking about the mural," she said, her voice quiet but steady. "About what it means, about what you said." She hesitated. "About the city." Kofi turned to face her, his expression unreadable. He gestured to the mural. "This is the story I'm telling. It's not just about love. It's about history, about survival. About a city that's losing its soul in the name of progress." Amina stepped closer to the mural, her fingers brushing against the rough surface of the wall. She could feel the weight of the painting beneath her fingertips, as though it were alive, pulsing with energy. "I don't know what to do," she confessed. "I'm part of the system that wants to tear this down. But I see it. I understand it now." She turned to Kofi, her eyes pleading. "How can I fix this? How can I protect it and still do my job?" Kofi's eyes softened, and for a moment, it seemed like the city around them had disappeared. All that was left was the two of them, standing in front of the mural, as though they were the only ones who mattered. "The answer is simple," Kofi said. "You can't fix this from the inside. The city is too far gone. But you can help people remember. You can help them see the value in things they're too busy to notice." Amina's mind raced. Was he asking her to defy her job, to risk everything she had worked for? To choose art over progress? "I can't just stop the demolition," Amina said. "I can single-handedly save this place." "No," Kofi agreed, "but you can make them question why they're tearing it down in the first place. You can make them see what's been lost." Amina stared at him, her heart pounding in her chest. She had never been a rebel, never gone against the system. But now, standing in front of Kofi, she wasn't sure if she could walk away from this. The city needed her work, but her soul was telling her something else. Something deeper. She was trapped between two worlds, one of progress, and one of preservation. But it wasn't just the city she was fighting for now. It was something inside of her that she hadn't realized had been there all along, the need to protect the intangible beauty of the world, the things that couldn't be measured by money or power. "I'll fight for it," she said, her voice firm. "I'll do everything I can." Kofi smiled, a rare, genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Then let's do it together." Over the next few days, Amina and Kofi worked together in secret. They held meetings at her apartment, gathered information, and made plans. Kofi painted new murals across the city, hidden ones that only those who truly looked could find. Murals that told the stories of the city's past, of the people who had built it, and of the spirits that still watched over it. They formed a network of artists, activists, and locals who cared about the soul of the city. They shared their work on social media, spread the word, and slowly but surely, they built a movement. More and more people started to see the murals, to understand the message Kofi and Amina were trying to send. The city's development plans began to face public opposition. But Amina knew it wasn't enough just to make people see. They had to change the course of history. And that meant taking the fight to the heart of the city, the government. The day of the council meeting arrived. The room was filled with city officials, architects, and urban planners, all eager to discuss the future of District 7. Amina stood at the back of the room, her heart pounding in her chest. This was it, the moment that would define everything. When it was her turn to speak, she walked to the front of the room and stood behind the podium. The eyes of the council members were upon her, and for a moment, she felt small and insignificant. But then she remembered Kofi's words. The stories of the city were worth fighting for. She took a deep breath and began. I am Amina Dabiri, and I stand here not as a government planner, but as a citizen of Azania. I stand here as someone who believes in the power of art to shape the future, and in the power of heritage to connect us to our past. The city we are building is not just about concrete and glass. It's about the people who live here, the stories we tell, and the culture we carry with us. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. We cannot erase the history of this city in the name of progress. We must find a way to preserve the past while embracing the future. I ask you to reconsider the demolition of District 7, and to see it not as an obstacle, but as the foundation upon which we can build something greater. There was silence in the room. Amina could feel the eyes of the council members upon her, but she didn't look away. She had said her piece, and now, all she could do was wait. Finally, one of the senior council members stood up. His face was stern, but there was something in his eyes that told Amina he was listening. He nodded slowly. We will reconsider, he said. The days that followed the council meeting were filled with tension. Amina could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on her with every step she took through the streets of Azania City. It was as though the entire city had been holding its breath, waiting for the council's verdict on the fate of District 7. Every moment felt like a countdown to something bigger than herself. Amina had always been someone who valued logic, structure, and progress. She had worked tirelessly to earn her position as an urban planner, believing that the future of the city lay in sleek skyscrapers, efficient transport systems, and organized chaos. But now, standing at the intersection of her duty and her conscience, Amina was beginning to question everything she had once believed in. She had always known that cities were more than just buildings. They were living, breathing entities that carried the memories of the people who built them, the souls of the ancestors who shaped them. And now, with the future of District 7 in jeopardy, Amina realized that the fate of the city wasn't just about the physical structures, it was about the stories that lived within them. The council had agreed to reconsider the demolition of District 7, but that didn't mean the fight was over. The forces of development were powerful, and the pressure to modernize the city was relentless. Amina knew that the real battle had just begun. Kofi was waiting for her at the mural when Amina arrived that afternoon. He was standing in front of the painting, as if the mural itself was offering him answers to questions he hadn't yet voiced. His expression was calm, but there was an intensity in his eyes that made Amina feel like she was walking into a storm. You're here, Kofi said, his voice soft but filled with purpose. Good. We need to talk. Amina didn't speak immediately. She took in the sight of the mural, her fingers brushing lightly against the wall. The golden thread that connected the lovers in the painting seemed to pulse under her touch, as though it was alive, whispering secrets in a language only the heart could understand. I don't know what to do, Amina confessed, her voice breaking the silence. The council is reconsidering, but I don't trust them. I don't know if they'll actually change their minds. Kofi stepped closer, his presence grounding her. Change is never easy. You have to be ready for a fight. But the question isn't whether or not they'll listen. The question is, will you stay true to what you believe? Amina met his gaze, her heart pounding in her chest. She had never been a fighter, not in the way Kofi was. He had lived his life as an artist, constantly challenging the status quo, pushing boundaries. But Amina had always been a pragmatist, someone who found safety in rules and systems. Now, for the first time in her life, she was being asked to take a stand for something she couldn't measure, something intangible. I can't do it alone, Amina whispered, the weight of her decision pressing down on her. I don't know how to fight this. You're not alone, Kofi replied, his voice steady. We've got the people. And we've got the power of the past. You don't have to fight the system with force. You fight it with truth. The truth of the city. The truth of its history. And most of all, the truth of the people who call it home. Amina looked at him, and in that moment, something shifted inside her. Kofi's words were like a spark in the darkness, igniting a fire she hadn't known she possessed. For the first time, she felt a sense of clarity. This wasn't just about District 7. This was about preserving the soul of the city itself. Okay, she said, her voice firm. Let's do this. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Amina and Kofi worked tirelessly to rally support for the cause. They organized street protests, held underground art exhibitions, and launched a viral social media campaign showcasing the murals that had been painted across the city. Each piece of artwork told a story of the people, the culture, and the history that had shaped Azania. But it wasn't just about art. Amina and Kofi used every tool at their disposal to build a movement. They met with local community leaders, gathered petitions, and convinced the media to cover the fight for District 7. Amina's voice, once confined to the sterile halls of city planning meetings, now rang out across the streets. She spoke with passion, with conviction, and with a newfound understanding of the city's true power. The opposition, however, was fierce. Developers, government officials, and powerful business interests lined up to protect their plans for the city. They had the resources, the connections, and the influence to bulldoze any resistance that stood in their way. But what they didn't have was the heart of the people. And as Amina and Kofi dug deeper into the city's history, they uncovered stories of resilience, rebellion, and survival that had been buried beneath layers of concrete and glass. Every story they uncovered became a weapon in the fight to protect District 7. They shared the tales of the city's founding, of the indigenous communities who had lived there for centuries, and of the artists, activists, and dreamers who had used their talents to build a culture that was unique to Azania. The mural, too, became a symbol, a rallying cry for those who believed in preserving the soul of the city. It was no longer just a piece of art. It was a movement. And the more people saw it, the more they understood the message it carried. The final showdown came at the next city council meeting. Amina stood at the front of the room once again, her heart racing. This time, however, she wasn't alone. Behind her stood Kofi, the artists, community leaders, and hundreds of citizens who had gathered to show their support. The council members looked uneasy, their faces etched with concern. They had expected a quiet approval of their development plans, not the storm that had erupted in the streets. The city was changing, and they could feel the winds of resistance. Amina took a deep breath and stepped forward, her voice strong and clear. Azania City is more than just buildings, she began. It's more than just progress. It's the heart and soul of the people who live here. And that heart is not something you can tear down. That heart is something you build on. She paused, letting her words sink in. The room was silent, the weight of her statement hanging in the air. We are asking you to reconsider, she continued. To listen to the people of the city. To understand that we cannot sacrifice our heritage for the sake of modernity. If we do, we risk losing the very essence of what makes Azania special. There was a long silence before one of the council members finally spoke. His voice was gruff but thoughtful. You've made a strong case, Amina. A very strong case. But we can't ignore the reality of development. The city needs to grow. And it can, Amina replied, her voice unwavering. But not at the expense of the people who built it. We can have progress, and we can have preservation. It's not one or the other. It's both. The council members exchanged glances, and after what felt like an eternity, they nodded. Agreed, the senior council member said. We'll revise the plans. District 7 will be preserved. And we'll work with the community to integrate the murals into the new development. Amina's heart soared. The fight was far from over, but this was a victory for the people, for the city, and for the soul of Azania. The news that District 7 would be preserved spread like wildfire across Azania City. For the first time in weeks, Amina could breathe without the constant weight of uncertainty on her shoulders. She had won the battle, not just for the murals and the people of District 7, but for herself. The fight had changed her in ways she couldn't yet comprehend. It was no longer just about the city, or her career, or even Kofi's murals. It was about the deeper connection she had found to the place she had grown up, the people she had forgotten, and the heritage she had nearly abandoned in the name of progress. But as the city celebrated the council's decision, new challenges began to emerge. Though the murals would be preserved and integrated into the redevelopment plans, the developers had made it clear that they intended to keep pushing their vision of the future. There were still compromises to be made, and Amina had to navigate a complex political landscape where not everyone was pleased with the compromise. Despite the agreement, the tension between the city's vision of progress and its cultural roots continued to simmer beneath the surface. Amina could feel the shift in the air, a change, but not yet a resolution. And though the mural was safe, it had become something more than just a work of art. It had become a symbol, a rallying cry for those who believed the soul of the city could not be bought or sold. Kofi, however, had been quiet in the days following the council's decision. Amina hadn't seen him as often, and when she did, he seemed lost in thought. The intensity in his eyes hadn't faded, but there was a distance there, a wall he was putting up. She tried reaching out, but he was always too busy with his artwork, too focused on his next project. Amina was beginning to understand that for Kofi, this fight was personal. The mural, the city, this wasn't just a fight for preservation. It was a fight for his identity, his purpose. The struggle ran deeper for him, rooted in something that wasn't easily explained. She had seen it in his eyes the first time they met, the passion that burned brighter than any city lights. He wasn't just an artist, he was a storyteller, a keeper of history, and the weight of his responsibility hung heavy on him. She stood in front of one of Kofi's newest works, an impromptu mural on a forgotten wall in the outskirts of District 7. It depicted the city's history, not as a timeline, but as an explosion of vibrant, chaotic images. People danced, streets were filled with life, and the spirits of the ancestors watched over the chaos, their presence both protective and watchful. It was a masterpiece, a tapestry of everything Azania had been, and everything it still could be. But Kofi was nowhere to be found. His absence felt like a hole in the fabric of the city, a space that even his art couldn't fill. Weeks passed, and as the plans for District 7's redevelopment progressed, Amina found herself increasingly at odds with her colleagues. The city's push for modernity was gaining momentum again, and the pressures were mounting. Developers were already eyeing the prime land in District 7, eager to construct luxury apartments and high-end shopping complexes. They had already begun the process of clearing out old buildings, marking spaces for demolition. It was as though the preservation of the murals was merely a gesture, a way to appease the public while the true face of the city changed. Amina had seen the signs, the tension in the meetings, the subtle but forceful way that developers were steering the conversation. She had been promised that District 7 would be preserved, but she knew the battle wasn't over. The developers were circling like vultures, waiting for the right moment to swoop in. One evening, as Amina was preparing for another long day of meetings, she received a call from Kofi. His voice was strained, almost distant. "I need to see you," he said, his words clipped. "It's urgent." Amina met Kofi in a small, quiet cafe on the edge of the city. He was sitting at a corner table, his eyes clouded with something she couldn't place. As she sat down across from him, she noticed that he hadn't touched his coffee. He was lost in thought, his hands fidgeting with the cup, a far cry from the confident, outspoken man she had met months ago. "Kofi," she asked, her voice soft, unsure. He looked up at her, his gaze weary. "They're going to tear it down, Amina. They're going to erase everything. The murals. The history. The people." Amina's heart sank. "What do you mean? We fought for this. We won." Kofi shook his head. "The developers, the ones who want to modernize the city, they found a way to bypass the agreement. They're going to build the shopping malls and luxury apartments anyway. They'll say the murals are being preserved, but they're just a token. The heart of the city will be gone. And with it, the soul." Amina felt a cold knot form in her stomach. She had suspected that the agreement wasn't as solid as it seemed, but hearing it from Kofi made it real, too real. The fight had been far from over. "We have to stop them," she said, her voice rising with determination. "We can't let them erase everything we've worked for." Kofi looked at her, his expression still distant. "We can't stop them alone, Amina. We need more than just protests and murals. We need to strike at the core. We need to show the people the truth. That's the only way they'll listen." Amina felt a surge of frustration. "I've already fought for the city. I've done everything I can. But we can't do this alone. We need to convince the government again. We need to go public, to expose what's happening." Kofi leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. "What if the government is part of it? What if the people in power are just as much a part of the problem? What if they're too deep in the pocket of the developers to care?" The words hit her like a slap. She hadn't considered that. The system she had worked so hard to be a part of, was it complicit in the destruction of her city's soul? Amina took a deep breath, her hands shaking. This wasn't just about murals. This wasn't just about buildings. This was about everything, the city, the people, their memories. This was a fight for the future and the past. "I won't let them win," she said, her voice filled with resolve. Kofi finally met her gaze, and for the first time in weeks, there was a flicker of hope in his eyes. "Then let's fight together." That night, Amina and Kofi began to plan. They couldn't do this alone. But they had the power of the people, an army of artists, activists, and everyday citizens who cared about the city as much as they did. It was time to go public with the truth. The developers had to be exposed for what they were, destroyers of culture, thieves of history. They reached out to local journalists, pitched their story to media outlets, and began gathering more support from the public. They were ready to take the fight back to the council, to the streets, and to the heart of Azania City itself. The stage was set. The battle for Azania City was about to take a new turn. Amina and Kofi knew that it wouldn't be easy. They were going up against powerful forces, forces that would stop at nothing to claim the city's future for themselves. But they also knew one thing: they weren't alone. And together, they would fight for the soul of Azania. The day of the rally dawned with the city still in the grip of uncertainty. The streets of Azania were buzzing with anticipation. It had been weeks since Amina and Kofi had begun their campaign, and now the time had come to take their fight to the heart of the city, an action that would define the future of District 7, the city itself, and their own lives. Amina stood at the front of the gathering crowd, her heart racing. The mural had become more than a symbol now, it was a representation of everything the people of Azania stood for: history, culture, and the essence of the city. In front of her, the crowd was chanting, their voices rising together in unity. They were demanding a future where the soul of the city wasn't swallowed by greed, where the past and the future could coexist. Today, we make our voices heard. Amina shouted into the megaphone. Today, we stand for Azania. For its history. For its future. The crowd roared in response, their energy crackling in the air. They were ready. This wasn't just another protest, it was the culmination of everything they had fought for, a stand against the forces that sought to erase their story. Behind her, Kofi stood with the artists and community leaders, his eyes locked onto the mural that had become the rallying point of the movement. His face was calm, but there was a fire in his gaze, a fire that spoke of the battles he had fought for his art and his city. "We can't lose this," he said quietly to Amina as she walked up to him. "This mural, this fight, it's about more than us. It's about them. The people who come after us. We can't let them be erased." Amina nodded. "I know. This is the heart of Azania, Kofi. And we will protect it." The rally moved through the streets, a sea of people shouting their demands for preservation, for justice. Along the way, people came out of their homes, joining the procession, adding their voices to the growing chorus. Young and old, from every neighborhood in Azania, they all had a stake in the future of the city. But as they neared the city's central plaza, the one where the government building stood, the mood began to shift. A line of riot police had already set up barricades, blocking their path. The tension in the air thickened. This was the point where the peaceful march could either crumble into chaos or become a defining moment for the city's future. Amina could feel her pulse quicken as she looked at the wall of officers. She knew this wasn't going to be easy, but she also knew that this was the moment. They had come too far to back down now. "Don't stop," she urged the crowd. "We've come too far to turn back. They can silence us." Kofi stood by her side, his eyes scanning the line of officers. "This is it," he said, almost to himself. "Either they listen, or they won't." With a deep breath, Amina raised her hand, signaling the crowd to keep moving forward. The chants grew louder, the sound of the people's voices unwavering, as they marched forward with purpose. The standoff was inevitable. The police moved forward to block the crowd, but Amina held her ground. The tension in the air was palpable, like the calm before a storm. Amina's voice rang out once more, steady and unyielding. "We are here today because this city belongs to the people. This city is built on the stories of those who came before us, and we will not let it be sold to the highest bidder." A silence hung over the crowd, and for a moment, Amina thought they might back down. But then, from the back of the crowd, came a loud shout, a shout that echoed through the plaza. "We will not be erased." The chant spread like wildfire. The energy from the crowd surged, and the line of police began to waver. The voices of the people were too loud, too powerful. They could feel the strength of the unity around them. And then, something incredible happened. From the government building steps, the mayor appeared, flanked by a few of the council members. Amina's heart skipped a beat. This was it. This was the moment she had been waiting for. The moment when they would either be heard, or silenced. The mayor raised his hand, calling for quiet. When the crowd fell silent, he spoke, his voice carrying across the plaza. "I've heard the people," he said, his tone serious. "I've heard your concerns. I understand the importance of preserving Azania's history. And after careful consideration, we are prepared to make changes to the development plans. District 7 will be preserved, its history, its culture, and its people will remain at the heart of the city's future." The crowd erupted in cheers. Amina could hardly believe what she was hearing. The fight had been won. The city was saved. But even as the cheers echoed around her, Amina knew that this was just the beginning. The city's future would still be shaped by those who fought for it. The battle for Azania Soul was far from over. Developers would not give up easily, and there would be more challenges ahead. But for now, in this moment, Amina felt a deep sense of peace. As the crowd continued to celebrate, Kofi turned to Amina, his expression one of quiet satisfaction. "We did it," he said, a smile playing at the corner of his lips. "But it's not just us. It's the city. The people. They fought for their home." Amina smiled back, her eyes full of gratitude. "Yes, we did. But it's only the beginning. The fight doesn't end here. We have to keep protecting this city, this history, this culture." Kofi nodded. "And we will. Together." As the sun began to set over Azania City, casting a warm glow over the mural in District 7, Amina knew that her journey wasn't over. The city had been safe for now, but the real work was just beginning. She had found her purpose, and in Kofi, she had found a partner who shared her vision for a city where progress and preservation could go hand in hand. Azania's future was uncertain, but it was now in the hands of its people. And as long as they stood together, there was nothing they couldn't accomplish.